Welcome to another episode of Sean Chronicles, going all the way live with your host, me, Brother Sean Muhammad. And I'd like to bring to you from the Ministry of Arts and Culture of Muhammad's Mosque number 36, a panel discussion that was held on October 15th at the Movement School here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We had a panel discussion on the 27th anniversary of the Million Man March and what is the meaning and significance of the Holy Day of Atonement. So thank you for joining in. I hope you enjoy.
So, real quick, we ain't gonna waste no time because we want to get as much information out as possible because the root of the Million Man March was something called the 8 Steps of Atonement, right? So the 8 steps, number 1 is you got to point out the wrong. You got to acknowledge the wrong. Then you got to confess the wrong. Then you got to repent of the wrong. Then you get to the 5th stage. You got to go through all those stages before you get to atonement. The 5th stage is atonement, means you got to get in the process of proving to yourself and the other individuals that you may have an atonement with that you were sick and sorry over what you did. Then you get forgiveness. Then you get reconciliation, then restoration, then you're back to an unimpaired condition. And the hostile situation that was between you and that brother or that sister, now there's a clear path from my heart to your heart. We don't have to be fake and phony around each other because we in love again. And that's what it's all about. We want to be in love again. Yeah. Don't we want to be in love again? Yes, sir. See, and the Nation of Islam and the FOI, these brothers that you see, what holds us together is the love of the brotherhood. And the scripture says we can tell that we pass from death to life because we what? We love the brotherhood. So that's what atonement is all about. So let's go through these steps. And first, before we do that, I want each of these brothers, as we're on the anniversary weekend of the Million Man March, tell us what the march meant to you personally. What the march meant to you personally.
The march was something spiritual. It wasn't just brothers coming together. What it meant to me was unity, it meant power, and it was very inspiring.
It was one of the most personal, but also organizational transformative moment for me. I saw the brotherhood, the love, the unity that we all have been praying for. We needed someone to be able to pull ourselves together and organize us as a people. Our men have been looking for this kind of leadership. And I came away having heard the mandate and the call to these action items. I mean, one of the action items that I recall Minister Farrakhan asking for us was to go back into your homes, go back into your communities and be upright and to assume your position and your duty and your obligation. And from that, we started some national manhood conferences over at UNC Charlotte with Dr. Akbar and Naim Akbar and Jawanza Kanjufu, etc. From that, we then morphed into this weekly manhood training that we continue to work through, and we've expanded with the agricultural aspects of it. But the teachings and the call to order that the minister laid out over 27 years ago still resonate in me, and I still draw great inspiration. I still draw great strength. I still draw fire from that, and much of what we've been able to accomplish and to endure from the teachings and some of the outcomes from the Million Man March. Ashe.
The Million Man March has so many pieces to it, and I would urge anybody to go back and just watch the tape. It'll make the hair stand up on your skin because it was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and we got to teach this to our people. So my question is, the knowledge of self piece. We teach it in the nation. You teach it, Brother Reg. How are we going to translate this over to the general community and get them to buy in to the process of, there's a process. It ain't just one sit down and everything's all right. This is a process.
I'm going to add that in my own development, efforts to feed my own self and to develop myself, one of the sessions that I've been had the luxury of going through most recently was from Dr. Joy DeGroot. Dr. Joy DeGroot. She's done work on generational trauma as well as the post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes, sir.
And one of the instruments and tools that she used to work with young people is what's called a respect scale. A respect scale. And the reason why she did the respect scale was because of a lot of the instruments and tools were not created by our people, by our minds, for our own purposes. And so the respect scale it's an assessment. It's a way to help work with our young people. And what they have uncovered is certainly along the lines of what Mr. Corey just got to say. Either what is just blatant disrespect or perceived disrespect. In the minds of that individual, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to diminish you, I'm going to harm you because I perceive that you just disrespected me. And some of the reasons for the perceived disrespect could be as frivolous as you can imagine. You look me in the eye. You thought you were looking at my lady. I thought you were, just all kinds of frivolous ways in which we bring finality to a conflict. That's why I believe that our philosophy of being prescriptive and preventive with our efforts through the Males Place is where we draw on long-held traditions of bringing black boys together long before they've had the experience of engaging into levels of violence of this nature, as well as before they engage into substance and experience a lot of the failure that a lot of them have done. So at 12 to 18, we bring them in and we draw on time-honored traditions to teach knowledge of self, to teach personal responsibility, to teach self-reliance, to teach the roles and duties of the black man and the black family. And so by helping do on the preventive end, undergird and do intervention whenever necessary, it provides the young man a mirror. Here is who you are, here's what your duty, here's what your role is, here are some alternatives. If you feel that there is some beef going on with someone and you need to reconcile, here's some alternative on how to go about doing it. And of course, we focus on three major areas: the mentorship and training, the agriculture, social justice. Of course, if they're out there picking weeds, and not weed, but weeds, from the garden and cultivating and practicing brotherhood while they work, it's and while the elders are working side by side with them. The idle mind is the devil's what?
Workshop.
Workshop. So you got to keep boys in particular busy. And when you are able to guide and work with them, having a man next to them and show them the way, I think it'll be a little easier. That's not to oversimplify the magnitude of what's happening, but it is certainly a way to positively impact our young brothers and this senseless, insane level of violence that we're directing toward each other.
We have to go after the young people now. I don't mean no harm. I won't walk that far to teach no old people. Because we're full of hell and we ain't gonna change. So it's time for us to to forgive whatever has been done. It's already done. Now we got to deal with what we have to deal with, and that's the young people. They got it.
Let's talk about this and get right down to the nitty-gritty. In Charlotte, we got some killing. Coming right behind you, Minister Lee, what you're talking about. How do we use what we know about Atonement, Million Man March to stop the killing? We have a mother sitting in the audience who lost her son to gun violence. And she's here because she wants to hear something of what we know. Because I told her about Atonement. How are we going to use that to stop the killing in the city of Charlotte?
The panel today, we are focused on the 8 steps of atonement. But the atonement piece is the 5th step. See, there's 4 other steps to come before we get to atonement, which is at one. And Brother Minister Lee just mentioned just now, and I'll come right to Brother's point, is that someone must point out the wrong. And then after that, it comes acknowledging the wrong. We could stay on those 2 points and talk quite a bit and come up with what needs to happen after that, because the fact of the matter is a lot of our brothers and sisters that are unfortunately harming one another, hurting one another, killing one another. A lot of it is just not only due to a lack of knowledge and love of self, but sometimes some of it's just straight miscommunication, not having someone that can help resolve conflict. Now remember, we're talking about the Million Man March 27 years ago, but for those that may not be aware, 5 years after that, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan called the Million Family March, which focused on marriage, it focused on the family. And then after that, 10 years from 1995, Millions More Movement, and then just a few years ago, Justice or Else, the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. Now, one of the things he said, and he said to all who were listening, is that we have to have 10,000 fearless men, and then later women was mentioned as well, that will stand up and stand between the guns and the violence in our community and set up conflict resolution. And so this challenge of killing is so multifaceted, but we can start with that point again of conflict resolution, because when we boil down a lot of these conflicts that lead to killing, sometimes we'll find it's things that I don't want to minimize and say senseless, but it's things that could have been avoided if we have the parties that can bring mediation to the table.
When we recognize there is some animosity and beef that might be going on, 2 situations come to mind. One was, I noticed over social media 2 adult black men going back and forth, threatening one another. I then proposed to one of the brothers that that they tone that stuff down, that they take that off the media, that they have some level of discussion. And of course, with his friends pushing him up, he didn't want to he didn't want to look like a punk or whatever, so they continued going back and forth. And once it got real nasty, as he said, once it got sticky, he then privately reached out to me, and then I called upon some of the highly respected elders in the community, like Mr. Muhammad. So we were able to, we got about 15 other elders in the community, and we were able to turn the temperature down and to be able to resolve that. And we were able to reconcile that and at least get those 2 brothers to a point where there were no killing, shooting, or anything like that. There was another situation where apparently this brother that I had not partnered with in a while, but it was just out of operational unity. We still doing some of the same things, flowing in some of the same direction. But apparently had shared with others that there was some hostility that he had toward me. So when I heard about it, I reached out to some other elders in the community and were able to come together. And, so we were able to move on and to, again, it wasn't an issue that I was even aware of, to be honest with you. But it was brought to my attention, and rather than someone harboring feelings, and it was basically out of my holding that brother accountable for the way he behaved. And so this resentment had lasted for probably a couple of years. But as opposed to saying, I don't need this, I don't need that, I was able to get some elders to come together and to almost almost like a referee, the concerns and the feelings that he had, and even though I was not fully aware of what was going on with the brother, I apologize for anything I may have said, may have injured him, may have hurt his feelings, but also thank him for what he does and everything else. So sometimes when we're dealing with that kind of stuff in our community, these are not just wayward young people. Sometimes it can be the elders, the jengas, and the highly respected people in the community too. So everybody's not going to just love on you like that. Sometimes there's going to be, you're amazed at some of the resentment that exists between us and in just the nature of our community. There's some serious, we have lots of strengths, a lot of things to be excited about, but we got some serious challenges as well.
I would share something. How can we transfer this and put something in place? Brothers and sisters, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he was teaching and happens to be at that time the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, was at this meeting as well. And this question of violence came up. And this article is entitled, "The Cause and Effect of a Violent Society." And one of the things the minister mentioned, because a lot of focus was being put, and it should be, on what's happening in our community, but he said something. He said, how can we stop the violence at the bottom when the violence is what it is at the top, meaning in this country? See, America spends more on her military budget than the next two nations put together behind her. We live in a violent society. From the capture of this land, from those that were already here, from the enslavement of our people. This is a violent society, whether we want to look at that or not. And unfortunately, we've adopted ways that don't help us, but harm us. Even the Willie Lynch letter, if we remember, the minister read that, we have this fomented, division is happening between us, but I don't want to leave us there, because Brother Daniel said, or Brother BJ said something that he said this is a process. So when these steps of atonement were introduced as a process, in the Bible, in the book of James, it talks about this little thing we have in our mouth. It's called a small member of the body. This little pink, it's referred to as a whirlwind, because it can cause all kinds of trouble. And so this little small member of our body, again, a lot of times with the violence, it comes from what we're saying, what we're doing. I want to stop for a moment. We want to be an example to the youth. Do you know, as adults, our black leadership, even here in Charlotte, that we don't show a good example of atonement? We fall out on, I'm talking about as adults, we'll fall out on social media. Now, when there's differences, there's ways things can be done when it says someone must point out the wrong and acknowledge the wrong. But a lot of times we really don't show a good example. Our youth, the condition that our youth is in, we have a lot to bear of our responsibility for that. for our not teaching our youth properly and not being the best examples, and for our, unfortunately, instead of going on to build and do something for self, we kind of more so integrated than separated. And God never gave that as a solution to Moses and the children of Israel. He wanted to integrate from Pharaoh's wicked ways. Are you with me, brothers and sisters?
Yes, sir.
So the whole point I'm making is, even when I look at, I had to go back and look at my own self. We want to start this, we got to look and see, how am I, if the wrong is pointed out to me, am I able to accept that wrong? And when I mention Charlotte leadership, a lot of times we beefing. And what kind of example does that provide if we're beefing? So if this is a process that we want to see, then it's best if I see it in me before I can expect to see it in others, so I can go be an example to a brother or a young sister that I am speaking to. I'm going to say this and then I'll be quiet. Yesterday I was pulling up at the grocery store, and I was leaving out, and I guess I didn't move quick enough. And this Latino brother and his woman was with him, and he said some harsh words out the window, and I heard him, and it's like I went from 0 to 60 inside. I was ready to hop out the car. I don't know what was going to happen. I said, now how this going to look? Me and this brown brother, we out here, we get into a full-fledged thing over some freaking words that he said to me. Are you with me, brother? So I had to think about this for a minute. And just had to think, and I said, I ain't going to even engage. But it went there almost. But the point I'm making is, it's this kind of restraint. We have to strive to be an example. I'm talking about in our community first. This is why this is the beginning of a lot of these things like this that can happen. The minister, man, I've witnessed, and Brother Minister Lee has been taught personally by him, but beyond of Minister Louis Farrakhan, you always have people at his table that have lied, stolen, and he knew they lied and stole from him and said all kind of things, but he shows an example of what love looks like, because love is duty. And so in order to be a redeemers, if that is something we'll focus on, it's a certain heart that we have to have, and we have to question our own selves. What if our children point out the wrong? Can we take it, or is our ego too big if a child points out the wrong? What if another community leader points out the wrong of another community leader? Can we take it, or is our ego going to step in there? So if we want the process, let's practice the process and learn the process first, and then strive to practice it and be an example. And also, then I'll be done, is point out, we got violence, we got all these bad things, but we have a lot of good happening in our community too. Right. And we need more, not need, I don't like to use that word, it's a poverty conscious word. We have to be about showing and highlighting. Man, the Warriors is coming out. The Young Saviors Academy. In the churches, those that are doing positive works. If we ought to have that be a part of our narrative too, we won't just be caught up in what the enemy wants us to think, that we just all shooting and killing each other so that they can end up buying up beta store and other places when the value goes down because we fail for the okie doke. Not that we ain't got some things to fix, but there's ulterior motives in some of these things that happen.
Well, point out the wrong and accept the wrong. I think that begins at home. And so, if we can do that at home, if you can do that with your wife, if you can do that with your children, that is a start right there. Because in most cases, we don't have good male and female relationship in husbands and wives.
Right.
They can barely pass each other in the home. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. If we're going to correct this, it must start there and then spread it abroad. But our children is being faced with something that as children we never even dreamed of as seeing. I came up in a community down in Rock Hill, South Carolina. We were in the rural area, cotton, farming cotton and all that kind of stuff. That was the tightest community that I ever witnessed in my life. That, some kind of way, we got to get this back to where we do things because they are right. We do things because they need doing.
This whole weekend is something As Brother Minister Lee said, the Million Man March shocked the world. It shocked the world. And so tomorrow, what we're talking about right now, the subject of tomorrow is atonement and reconciliation. We must settle our differences. So we invite you. You can look at it online if you like. If you have church service, you can look at it after that service. But if you're available, you can watch it online, or you can come right down to the Mosque on Brookshire, and we'll be glad to have you as a guest if you want to watch it and see it with the rest of the family there. So we are invited at 11 a.m. tomorrow to be able to see that. I want to close out by sharing something that this scripture was mentioned so much as we were preparing for the Million Man March, as it was being advertised. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Reverend Bemmel, who was a helper with the Million Man March, that helped point out to this part of Chronicles, in the book of Chronicles. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will heal their land. So I'm glad that this process we're talking about, it involves us. Nobody coming to save us but us, as Brother Minister Lee mentioned. And we do want to let you know, amongst all the other efforts that many of us have, we do have a Squash the Beef hotline that we're working to even strengthen it better. And what that is if you know a brother and sister that's beefing and at least one of them want to have some mediation, there's a number we have that we can give you that you can call. No police involvement. It's just those that are interested in trying to settle disputes in our community. We'll do what we can to sit down with them. Again, we're working to put that out there even more in this environment, and we'll be glad to get that number out to anyone that wants it. Have it stored in your phone. Again, if you know of some beef happening, and we'll do what we can to be able to help resolve that. One by one is how things change. Instead of trying to look for everything to just change all over, we're changing all over by changing it locally and individually.
You got a couple of minutes. I wanted to play the Million Man March pledge from 1995, just for you to hear the energy and what the minister was asking us to do and why it's so vitally important that we pick this mantle back up and spread it to our community so our people have a chance to have a clear path to each other's hearts.
Take this pledge. When I say I want you to say I, and I'll say your name. I know that there's so many names, but I want you to shout your name out so that the ancestors can hear it. Take this pledge with me. Say with me, please. Say your name. Pledge that from this day forward, I will strive to love my brother as I love myself. I say your name. From this day forward, strive to improve myself spiritually, morally, mentally, socially, politically, and economically for the benefit of myself, my family, and my people. I say your name, pledge that I will strive to build business, build houses, build hospitals, build factories, and enter into international trade for the good of myself, my family, and my people. I say your name, pledge that from this day forward, I will never my family, for any human being, except in self-defense. I say your name, pledge from this day forward, I will never abuse my wife by striking her, disrespecting her, for she is the mother of my children and the producer of my future. I say your name, pledge that from this day forward, I will never engage in the abuse of children, little boys or little girls, for sexual gratification. But I will let them grow in peace to be strong men and women for the future of our people. I say your name, will never again use the B word to describe any female, but particularly my own black sister. I say your name, pledge from this day forward that I will not poison my body with drugs or that which is destructive to my health and my well-being. I say your name, pledge from this day forward, I will support black newspapers, black radio, black television. I will support black artists who clean up their acts to show respect for themselves and respect for their people and respect for the ears of the human family.